Sorcerer for the Morrowind patch. This is going to be a build that is focused on very little to no farming and relatively budget, so if you want to actually get into PvP and do non-CP, specifically Battlegrounds, Sow the Seal, and PCNA, the non-CP campaign, this is for you. This is a build with great sustain, really high damage, and it's going to be very effective in all situations, which is why I like this, and this is the primary build that I still run. It was nice because when the Morrowind patch came, I didn't really have to make too many adjustments to this build to cater to the sustain problems that came with the Morrowind patch that everyone complained about. So I'm just going to run you through the gear. Initially I'm just going to show you Superstar for the too long didn't watch. If you just want to see the gear, not worried about the explanation on how it all works together, then here it is for you. You can pause the video. I'll also link a screenshot in the description. Oops, sorry. I'll also link a screenshot in the description so you can open up a link to this on Imager, take a peek at it, but I'm going to go through and explain all the pieces now, just so everyone can understand how everything works together and why I run it this way. So the first thing about this build is it's primarily crafted, so you don't have to worry about going out and farming pieces. It's all going to work well, and it's going to hit really hard, mostly because of the 3-piece on the jewelry, which I'll get into. But we're just going to start with the crafted pieces here. We're going to want to stick to the Undaunted meta, which is 1 heavy, 1 medium, 5 light, in order to get the additional 6% on your stats. It's super important with this build, specifically because your Magicka is going to be on the lower side as compared to some of these other Magicka Sorcerer builds, especially pet builds that are running around with Necropotents that have, 40, 45k Magicka. It's not going to be like that for us on this build, but it doesn't matter because you're going to hit super hard and you're not going to have sustain issues, so trust me on this, don't worry. Alright, so getting into the gear, I'm going to explain the sets I'm using first, and then I'll go into the individual pieces. Your 5-piece is going to be Seducer. Now this is a great set. It's only 3 traits to craft, and it is craftable, so it's nice and easy to obtain. You don't need to go farming any dungeons or any trials or anything like that. It's super simple. 3 traits, go and craft it, and you can cater all of your pieces to the Undaunted meta, which, if you're not familiar with it, in the Undaunted passive skill line here, Undaunted Metal, for as long as you have 1 of each type of armor, heavy, medium, and light, you gain a 2% bonus per type. So with 2 skill points in here with the line maxed out, you get an additional 6% on your stats. Now it's going to be huge for this build because you're going to already have low Magicka with this build, so any Magicka you can get is going to be fantastic here. So moving on here, the Seducer is the chest, the belt, the feet, the legs, and the hands. That means that your 5 pieces along your body, you're going to always have this active. This is going to be huge because it's going to be applied to both bars, both your front and your back. It's going to give you a lot of sustain within the non-CP campaigns here. So moving along here, your jewelry is actually going to be willpower. Now this set's a little bit underrated these days. It used to be popular, or more popular I should say. It's kind of fallen off as of late, but I really like it because it's a 3-piece set. It just goes right in your jewelry slots, and on each one of these you're going to use a max spell damage enchant. So each piece is going to give you an additional 174 spell damage, and the 3-piece is going to give you 1400 max Magicka as well as an additional 186 spell damage. Now that means this alone, this 3-piece, is giving you around 700 spell damage. That's a huge gain for just a 3-piece, so that's where a lot of your damage is coming from on this build. You're stacking spell damage on this, not max Magicka. So moving along here, your monster set. Well, this is a head and a shoulder, so you can put any monster set here that you want. It's flexible. Whatever you prefer to run, you can put here. I personally use Infernal Guardian because in 1v1 situations it puts a lot of pressure, particularly on stamina players, to roll dodge out of the way of these mortars. They hit really hard, so no one wants to get caught in these. You know, they're hitting for 5.7k here, so they're going to keep roll dodging because this is a 50% chance to proc. So as you're on your back bar shielding, there's a good chance it's going to proc. They're going to keep roll dodging. Eventually they're going to run out of resources and it's going to be time for you to just finish them off. So I like this, but realistically you can run, you can run Engine Guardian here for added sustain, even though it's not really necessary on this build. You're already going to have a ton of sustain. But if you are having sustain issues, you can run Engine Guardian. This works well. Or actually even Valken Scoria, which is a little bit underrated for Sorks, but you'll see when we get to the skills why this actually does proc pretty often, the way it's set up. But this is good for additional damage, as is Infernal Guardian. Or if you want some sustain, Engine Guardian, or really any other monster set, anything you really want to run with this, which is nice and it's flexible in that way. Moving on to the weapons, you can have any weapons you want here. I've just got Seducer front and back, just because I was at the crafting station when I made these and it was simple. When I get to the alternatives of this build, you'll see why you can change these out. But this is just the way I've got it here, so you can have any gold. I would always gold out your weapons for PvP. The Destro front bar is going to be sharpened, and I've got a weapon damage enchantment on this to up my spell damage. And on the back bar, you're going to have the defending Resto staff. This is going to be super important as well. I personally run this enchantment, which is magic damage, but also restores additional magicka. So if you're ever in a fight where you are having issues with sustain, you can shield up, do a few heavy attacks, and this actually gives you more magicka back on top of that. So, you do 2 or 3 heavy attacks, you're almost back to 100% on your magicka pool, which is why I run this enchantment. But you could run something else here, or even put a poison on your back bar if you really wanted to. I don't run poisons personally, but it's up to you. So just going a little more in detail on each of the individual pieces. Your chest piece, so here's the thing about this build. You're going to want to use a tri-enchantment on your big pieces here, specifically your chest, your head, and your legs. This is going to give you additional health and stamina on top of the magicka gain here. So rather than just stacking magicka, we're going to use these tri-enchantment on these 3 big pieces to gain additional resources, mostly for the stamina, but the health also helps here. Never hurts to have more health. So I use infused on these pieces, so infused on the chest, infused on the head, and actually I think, yeah, I've got divines on this, but you could put infused on here as well to up the enchantment. But I believe I have divines for the Mundus stone, which you'll see that I'm running a little bit later here. So those are the pieces here with the tri-enchantments. And moving along to the belt, I've got this as divines as well to boost my Mundus. The feet are going to be impen. The hands are going to be impen. And the shoulders I've got as impen here. Now this build is good because of this crafted piece here, this 5-piece. It allows you to cater whatever you need to keep that undaunted meta, I should say, of having 1 heavy, 1 medium, 1 light. So whatever monster set you get and whatever, you really only need to get the traits, right? So if you want to impen, you just get those 2 pieces in impen. It takes a lot less farming to do that, and then you can cater the rest of your armor to whatever pieces they need because they're crafted. Ideally though, chest you're going to want as heavy because that's your biggest piece. Heavy armor on a chest is going to give you the most armor. And I've got medium shoulders on this, so everything else is then light. But that additional gain in stats is going to be huge over here in the Undaunted, right? You're going to get an additional 6% on all of your stats with this setup, which is going to be crucial here. So just to go back in here, I'll go through the stats now. So your max magic is going to be 33k with this setup. Your max, or your Magicka recovery is going to be just shy of 1200. Your max health, I think I have the Emperorship Alliance right now, so it's, yeah, so your health is going to be more along the lines of 21k, I believe. Yeah, sounds about right. Your health recovery, very low. I'm a vampire. I'll explain that a little bit later as well, but your health recovery is going to be crap on this build. So, you know, this is where you'll notice the max stamina. I'm just shy of 15k on my stamina pool. Now this is huge in PvP because it's going to allow you to constantly break free of any CCs. It's going to allow you to do a little bit of blocking if big attacks come in. And it's also going to allow you to roll dodge significantly more than you normally would. This is just huge. It's crazy how much stamina you have on this build. This is the main thing that this build is really focused around, and why you have the tri-enchantments is for this big stamina pool mixed with the Undaunted. It's just going to be huge. So, working our way down here, your spell damage completely unbuffed, just sitting here doing nothing, is around 2400. It's pretty high for completely unbuffed. When we do buff up, you'll see it hits around 3300. Spell crit's low, but I base this build around having more spell damage constantly rather than relying on crits on my attack. So everything hits hard rather than just hoping that your crit is going to do a lot of damage and having lower spell damage. So that's what I focus on in this. Weapon doesn't matter. You can see our spell and physical resistance here, but when I buff up, it's going to go up significantly because on our back bar we've got defending, in addition to the, what is it, storm ability, I don't know, but it gives you more resistances, which is, this is going to jump up to around 21 and 19 respectively, which is a lot of resistance on top of your shields. You're going to be very hard to kill. So let's just move along here to the actual skills. So here's the skills that I'm running. Your front bar, your attack bar, is going to be your bread and butter Sorc ability. It's going to be Crystal Frags. Additionally, you're going to be running either Structured Entropy or Degeneration. I prefer Degeneration just because the health that you receive back from the light and heavy attacks, the 15% chance, the 15% chance procs pretty often, and you'll notice it when you're in battle. It's going to help. I just don't find the additional health slotted from the other one to be worth a damn, because when you switch bars, your health is going to go down, and I've actually gotten killed from that a few times. So I just prefer Degeneration all around. I just think it's a better PvP skill. But you can run either one, whatever you prefer. Your Haunting Curse, another bread and butter skill for sorcerers in PvP. This is a Nightblade's worst enemy. You're going to kill a lot of Nightblades with this and keep them out of stealth with it, so you're going to want this always applied. Moving right along, we've got Endless Fury. Run this over Mage's Fury in PvP. Anytime you kill anybody with this, it's going to give you an additional 4400 Magicka back, and you're going to be killing people with this constantly. It's just going to keep your sustain up. It's going to help so much. Mage's Fury is definitely more PvE focused, and I would always run Endless Fury in PvP situations. Similarly, with our final front bar skill, Crushing Shock, I'd run this over the other morph, which is more PvP focused. I think the other one does more damage and is kind of like an AoE to other enemies, but Crushing Shock's important in PvP because it's going to interrupt casters and set them off balance, which is good because people are constantly rezzing, and this is going to be a really easy ranged attack to just interrupt all those rezzes and just keep people from getting anybody up. It also does decent damage, which is nice. Our ultimate is going to be the Meteor, so some people prefer Shooting Star for, you know, big groups. If you hit them, you get a lot of your ultimate back, but I prefer Ice Comet. Does more damage, hits harder, and slows enemies, which anytime you can slow somebody in PvP, they're going to be vulnerable. So I prefer Ice Comet here, but either one, you're going to want the Meteor on here, on the front bar. You can also run Dawnbreaker or Soul Assault. I do switch them up occasionally. Those are going to be my 3 primary ultimates with this build, but generally I got Ice Comet on my bar almost always. So moving along to the back bar, you are going to have dark conversion. This is why we have such a big stamina pool. While Seducer does mitigate a lot of the cost of our abilities, it's not going to completely help us sustain, right? So we've got pretty low Magicka recovery, only 1150. Well, to compensate for that, you're going to be using this dark conversion. It's going to convert your stamina into Magicka directly. So if I cast a bunch of these and just do one of these, go back to 100 pretty much, right? So you're constantly going to be running around, shield stacking, doing whatever to stay alive. Just pop one of these every now and then, and you'll always be good. And you can see how little of the stamina pool it actually uses. It only uses 14% of your stam pool because it's so large, which is huge, because anytime you're being pressured at all, you can shield stack, streak, get behind a rock, right? Say you're low on Magicka, well, you break line of sight, pop one or two of these, and you come out and you're back to 100% on your Magicka, and then you can just go off again. So that's why we try and enchant the big pieces to get more stamina. That's why we use the Undaunted 3-piece to get the extra 6%, sitting at around 14.7. This is huge. So our next skill is going to be Healing Ward. This is your holy shit, I'm gonna die heal. It's gonna give you an enormous shield if you're low. Very occasionally, because it focuses on whoever is lowest. That includes allies. I have gotten killed before because it shields somebody who has lower health than me, even if I've only got like 1k, maybe somebody's got less, and I shield an ally rather than myself. But generally that's not going to happen. This is going to get you out of most situations with a huge shield. You pop this, and then you pop your Hardened Ward, and then you pop your Harness Magicka, so you get these huge shields, which is offset by the fact that we have a low Magicka pool, so our shields aren't that big. I think my Hardened Ward is around 7.4k if I recall. I don't have an add-on to tell me at the moment, but I think it's around 7.4 with this. So your shields are going to be lower than, or smaller I should say, than a lot of these other Magicka Sorcerers that have huge pools of Magicka. But if you stack these, even just right in a row here, you're only using, I guess, a quarter of your Magicka, but one dark conversion is going to put you back to 100%. So really, this build is all about maintaining your resources and being in control of them, rather than trying to stack recovery and not worry about them. It's a little bit more complex, I should say, in terms of the gameplay, but it's not the end of the world. You'll get used to it. You can also, if you wanted to, put a shield on your front bar, swap one of these abilities out, put it on, put another shield on your front bar so that you don't have to swap, just until you get used to it. But you're going to want your shields on your back bar once you get used to it, and all of your attack abilities on the front bar. That's how I run it. That's, I think, the best way here. But those are your shields, right? So your Harness Magicka is going to give you Magicka back anytime you're attacked, and each piece of light armor is going to increase the Magicka restored by 6%. So we've got 5 light. We're going to get, additional Magicka back because of this. So this is basically a free shield, because if you pop this and you get hit 3 times, you're getting pretty much the entire cost of the skill back. It's a no-brainer. You can take one of these shields off and run another ability if you want. I just prefer to have all these, especially if I'm in Cyrodiil, because of the Zergy groups that come around. You can take a lot of abuse if you've got all 3 shields on your bar and get away. And finally, your last skill here is going to be Streak. Streak is both your escape and your guaranteed stun, right? So you've got your stun on your Crystal Frags here, but it takes a while to cast, number one, if it's not procced, and other times you need an immediate stun. For example, if you're going to drop a meteor on someone, you might want to drop it and then streak through them just to stun them so they can't block your meteor. That way they take the full damage of the meteor rather than mitigate it all with a block. And it's your escape, if you got a Zerg coming after you, run, pop a few of these, get out of the way. Now, the other part about this build, which is I guess the complexity of it, is it relies a lot on your overload bar. So you'll notice my overload is my ultimate on my back bar right here. We don't ever really use this very rarely, like the actual ability. We only use it for our third bar. Now, I'm going to go through the skills. I generally run on my third bar, but this is really your utility bar. You can use it for whatever you want. You know, if you wanted to put rapids on it or whatever for your mounts, you can do that. But this is how I run it. I run defensive rune, so this is for 2.4 minutes. It's going to give you essentially a get out of jail free card. So say you're riding a mount and a Nightblade snipes you, well, they're going to get stunned as soon as it hits you. You'll still get hit and you'll still take the damage, but you're not going to immediately get attacked again because they're going to have to CC. It gives you time to react. This is super important, and I generally, even when I'm in battle, if I get hit, I'll switch to my overload bar and put this back on. I run shuffle as well because we've got such a huge stamina pool that I generally try to keep this up as well. Why the hell not is my mentality here, because we've got such a big stamina pool that, you know, you pop this and you pop your, what's the skill called? Boundless Storm. That was what I couldn't remember before. So you pop Boundless Storm and shuffle, and you can see that on your back bar here. Look at these resistances, 21 and 19, and you've got shuffle, so not everything's going to actually hit you, which is great. So you'll be dodging without actually having to dodge, and you'll be super tanky with your shields up. Additionally, the other skills that I've got on here are traps. So you've got your Volcanic Rune, which is in the Mages Guild skill line. So this essentially, if somebody runs into it, it's going to pop them up in the air and stun them. You're not really using it for the damage. It doesn't really do a lot of damage. Most people have a lot of armor, so this really only hits for like 2k. But you'll use it for, you know, cutting off choke points, right? So anywhere that goes, somebody runs into it. It's going to be even better in the next patch that drops, the Horns of the Reach, because this is actually going to be invisible to enemy players. So you're going to be able to put this at a choke point, and an enemy player will be able to see it, and they'll run right into it, which is awesome. So, you know, the way this build is really played is you're going to streak around, get away from people, overload, pop some stuff, use a dark conversion, get back up to your resources, and then you've got some wiggle room, which is great. You can run regular mines on the back here. I prefer the Daedric Tomb Morph, which allows you to pretty much place them wherever you want, you know, just because I'm always running around and I'm very mobile, and if I want to cut off a choke point and run away from somebody, right, I'll just pop this, I'll streak right behind me, drop some traps, and then just keep on going and get myself some distance. Depends on how much pressure there is. Obviously you don't need to do that all the time, but that's just how I am generally running this build. I try to keep both my shuffle and my Boundless Storm up 100% within a fight. Just gives you a big advantage being always buffed up. But the reason also for this Seducer set, decreasing the cost of abilities, is really because you're going to be going to your overload bar and constantly using buffs and such. So it helps keep the cost down when you're constantly switching and activating your buff skills as well. So that's just the way that I run the abilities and the bars. The third bar has been pretty crucial. I have yet to have a reason to get rid of it. I've considered putting a Resto ulti here and ditching the third bar, but just the utility that comes from the third bar as a Sorc is huge. You know, you get an extra 5 skills. And as you get used to going in and out of the overload bar, you'll get better at it, and it just becomes second nature, and you just essentially have 3 bars instead of 2, which is a huge advantage in and of itself. So going into a little bit more on here, I'm a vampire for both the Undeath passive, which, if you're not familiar, it is reduces your damage taken by up to 33% based on your missing health while you're below 50%. So as soon as you start dipping below 50% health, you're going to be pretty damn hard to kill. As you get closer to 0 health, you just become tankier and tankier. So that helps with everything, including the shielding and everything, which is nice. And I also use it for the recovery. It is a little bit tough, especially if you're going up against Magicka Dragonites. They hit super fucking hard against vampires. So if you're fighting in Magicka DK, make sure you're 100% on your shields. Don't ever let them get a shot off without, especially if you're not running a lot of impen pieces like me. You're going to be pretty squishy if those shields are down, so just be mindful of that. And the Mundus stone I'm running. So I am running the Apprentice, so this increases your spell damage even further. You can run the Mage if you want for the additional max Magicka. It'll put you more around 35k max Magicka if you want the bigger shields. I know some people prefer bigger shields. I don't really care because I'm going to stack shields anyway with Seducers, so I don't care how big my shields are, to be honest. But the additional spell damage is going to help you out a lot here. So I run the Apprentice personally, but you can run the Mage. You could also run the Atronach if you wanted more standard recovery, if you find this isn't enough. But like I said, your recovery is really going to be coming from Dark Conversion, so there's really no need to run that. And just, I don't even know if I showed it, but if you hit something, you can see that your spell damage is 3254 buffed up. So you're going to be hitting like a freight train, and with all these the sustain, you're going to be able to just frag after frag after frag after crushing shock on enemies, so you can be pretty ruthless and relentless in using your abilities rather than having to rely on heavy attacks to sustain. So this is the way I run this build. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments. Like I said, I'll leave that screenshot so you can see the superstar build here of everything as well. You can see the penetration and everything. But that's it. This is the build that requires very little farming and is relatively cheap to purchase the things that you don't have, such as the willpower jewelry. It's 20-ish K a piece now on PCNA, so 60 grand for the whole thing. It's really not that bad. And as an alternative that I forgot to mention here, if you are newer and you don't have any monster sets, you can additionally craft both a head and a shoulder, and then a stave for both the front and the back bar of a different 5-piece set, specifically one that's going to give you either more spell damage or more Magicka recovery and max Magicka. Any other set really is going to be helpful in that regard. So I was looking at a few of them here. Some of the earlier on ones here, like even Willow's Path would be good because it gives you additional Magicka and stamina recovery. Just to boost your stamina recovery since you're going to be pulling from that pool constantly anyway. So any of these other sets that's craftable that'll give you, you know, max Magicka, Magicka recovery, or even spell damage, you'll have a 3-piece if you're using it on both this and one of the bars. So you get an additional 3-piece out of that. So just cater it to whatever you need, and then you don't really have to do any farming at all whatsoever. But for me, I prefer to have a monster set. So, like I said, any questions, leave them in the comments, let me know. I will answer any comments that come my way about how to run the build or my playstyle in general. So, catch you guys.